Good evening, everybody. We are live. Paulo's back with us, feeling better this week. Wilson
Yes,
should be here. I guess he's just
Mhm.
running a little late.
I do have this thing that I bought at the pharmacy, which goes through in the nose.
Ah,
So during the broadcast, you will see me pump drugs through the nose.
up your
But
nose with a rubber
yeah,
hose.
but they are FDA approved. So
It's not just some crazy holistic medicine that you're shoving up your nose.
no, and it's completely legal. The FBI is not going to burst through my door.
Well, that's
We're also
good.
talking about clip art.
Clip art. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah. hmm but I think nobody's watching us, so we can talk about clip art for a little longer.
Clip art. Now with AI art, clip art is going to go away.
hmm
It'll be all AI clip art.
Yep. Stable diffusion's not bad, but you do need to work with it a little to come up with something decent. I saw a guy once post. It took me 2,000 tries to come up with these 10 drawings.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, you have you have to know how to write to do that. So it's like,
But I don't think it's even a question of writing. I think if the because the AI is never going to learn nuance. For example, if you put
right.
beautiful face, how does the AI know what a beautiful face is? It scours the internet looking for pictures which are tagged beautiful.
Good question.
So maybe the AI could. I think that you could train the AI to recognize something like vectors,
Hmm.
like you say, person running, arm pointing 27 degrees, 312 pixels in
That,
something like that.
that
Maybe I don't know.
there's actually a lot of prompts in AI
Yeah, yeah.
where you can, which I don't know, which you can tell to like make this one in the foreground, make that one in the background, emphasize this, de-emphasize that, and there's stuff like it's almost. I guess it's almost like a weird form of coding.
hmm
Good evening, Tid Coblin.
Yes, I
Paolo
am
is
back.
back
Mhm.
and ready for action.
That's right. Dead Goblin, what do you think about stable diffusion?
Yeah,
I'm sure he's heard of stable diffusion. Every guy who's into art has heard of stable diffusion.
yeah. I was just trying out something, but it cost money. Um, there's Wilson.
Yeah, Mid Journey, right?
No, another one that had to do with writing, and it would summarize because we can get transcripts for all our shows,
hmm
and he was showing you first a way to, um, I forget the name of the plugin. I'll have to find it,
hmm
but like if you want to get the transcript of the show we're doing now or the show from last week, there's like the three buttons you go over there, and there's a transcript button, and then you have to copy and paste all the transcript, or there's a plugin that puts a transcript button right at the bottom of the screen, and you just click on it, and it automatically saves this transcript as a what is it, CSV, which is some kind of database format because it opened up in numbers on my
Yeah.
Mac. I assume it
hmm
would open up in Excel too.
Yeah.
Um, and there was, it gives you times and what was said and all of it. And then this program I was trying, because the AI guy I was watching on TikTok was like, oh, you then go over to this place and you plug in this AI thing, which you can plug in like I think like Chat GPT or something you can or four you can plug in like 2,000 words. This one is like 12,000 words or something. So you can put a whole transcript in and hit summarize, and it summarizes the whole transcript for you. I was trying that out, but it turns out I could do a free trial of it, but I wasn't in the mood because if you don't cancel the free trial, it charges you $200 a year or something. Like, oh no, thanks. Good evening, Mind the Comics. Mm-hmm.
Gee, are you going to Beja? We have we have a comics event this weekend, but I'm not going because my car doesn't travel anymore.
Ah, that's too
It
bad.
can, yeah, it can drive down the street, but not 100 miles away.
An unreliable car is not fun.
Hmm.
What year is it? How many miles does it have on it?
120,000 miles.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and it's I think 12 years.
12 years
No,
old.
no,
Okay.
14 years old.
Ah. Did you buy it new or did you get it used?
It was used. It used to belong to a colleague's mother.
Ah. Too much street racing in that car.
No, 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 no. This is a European hatchback made for the city. The type of cars that you don't have in the United States because it's not a pickup truck.
It
Not
was
going to
only driven
Beijing.
by a little old lady to go to church.
Yeah, exactly.
Still on a semi sabbatical from comics.
Uh,
Look at that. At my comic shop this week, a guy who I've seen there before was, but I don't know his name. He walked in and he was like, "This is it. These are my last comics." Um, he's like, "I was just in the hospital. I got to pare down. We've got to get rid of everything. I'm not collecting comics anymore." He's like, "I'll come in and talk to Roy about selling my comics sometime." And John, who's working there, was like, "Okay." I was like, "Oh, I wonder what his story is." He's suddenly given up comics because of the hospital stay. My main car turned 30 years old this year. Wow. Huh. What's up with Scott? Which Scott? Scott who used to be on this show? I don't know. We see him occasionally on Facebook, but
mhm.
he
It,
chimes in
it,
our group. I guess.
yeah, it does show up on the chat on Comic Cracks and
Yes.
Ross's show.
Oh, he shows up in the chat in Ross's show. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like him to come back on the show. He gets the link every week, but when he can come back, he'll come back on. But I guess he just isn't into it right now. I'm analog, and my art is a strong believer in IP copyright better for artists, so I stayed away from AI. However, I do believe it's an art tool that opens up more possibilities than stagnates art. Yeah, could be. We'll
Sure.
see. I mean, I don't think artists themselves have much interest in AI. It's like I dabble in
you should.
I should, but it's like such a different process of making something because it is really more like writing than visualizing something because you got to visualize something and then describe it and then see what it gets you. I know there are people who've been using it, but I just haven't. And I actually think people who have money are going to use it more than people who don't. If you're making money from your art and you're doing well, I think you should really look into AI.
Yeah, but if people are afraid of companies stopping to hire artists and letting the AI do all the art, it's not going to happen because those companies are not staffed by artists who know how to make something visual. So they'll just type something ridiculous in one sentence and think that it's going to create the Mona Lisa for them.
Well, what it is there's, for most commercial work, there's good enough. And most artists who get hired are good enough. And I think AI is going to replace a lot of that good enough work. As soon as it gets good enough to do something like, I heard someone, I think it was Kevin Kabasic describing this. As soon as it gets good enough to do something like you talk to it and say, give me a two-shot of this actor and that actor next to each other, then draw back into then next panel, give me a medium shot of actor one, and then give me a shot of Spider-Man swinging through the city, and then give me a rear shot of Spider-Man swinging. As soon as you can describe stuff like that and it can do it, that's going to be. And I think it's going to get. It's going to get there. That's kind of be a game changer when you can when a movie director can describe what it wants to the AI and the AI can do it. That's going to put a lot of storyboard artists out of work. That's gonna so it's a lot of people like that who, when you can just describe what you want done to a certain extent, and the AI can do it good enough, then they're not going to hire an artist. That's what it's going to be. I think, at least. I don't know, because good most people who it's in comic books, you really have to be good in general. I mean, there's levels of good in comics, but there's so much drawing in comics that you have to be pretty good at drawing in order to be hired to draw a professional comic. But if you're doing storyboards or color comps or something like that for ad design, which is where a lot of money, like all that stuff that Neil Adams did all through the 70s and 80s and 90s, all that storyboard work and he did for commercials, and that stuff can more easily be done by AI, I think. That's the stuff that's in the most danger. But comics will eventually, when you can sit there, there will be a time when a writer can plug his script into an AI and the AI will draw the comic for him. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be good, but it might be good enough. That's what it is. Yeah, I hasn't seen Scott Connor in a while. Yeah, I haven't yet. But he was, I think last week he was in our Facebook group. I saw him. Copywriters will become the new crit. I just saw something. I think was it a Doonesbury cartoon where the it was a high school kid or a college kid, and I think it was a Doonesbury cartoon, and he was thinking about his future, and he's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about becoming an engineering prompt writer, or maybe a medical prompt writer, or if I really can get into it, I might become." He had all these. That was his vision of the future. This kid in the strip, his career was going to be a prompt writer, and it's like, you know what? That might be a career. Someone has to write these prompts, and if you're good at them, people who have great facility, the descriptive language will prosper. They might. I mean, or it's people who, right now, it's very similar to writing code in that if you know all the sort of code words to get things, because there's all sorts of prompts that you can tell that I just don't know. I mean, you can go and look up AI prompts on the web. They don't give you a bunch of them, but you then have to, I guess, write in the prompt. You have to visualize it and then write in these prompts. So it's a different sort of writing. Wilson is playing for Spidey Football Club tonight. Art for AI is digital, is valuable, but I treat it as a chore to work with computers and keyboards. Yeah, I understand that, definitely. There's some people,
sure. I get some people they don't like this. Even today, they still don't like working with computers. But
yeah. I
mean, you know what your mechanic does? Your mechanic does not open the engine ever to check what's wrong with it.
He plugs it in.
He just plugs it in.
I always bring up Joe Rosas, friend of ours, worked at Marvel, was like a really hot colorist in the early 90s. Colored a lot of the Jim Lee X-Men. They always asked for him. He was just no good on the computer. When the computer age came, he tried to make the transition, but he just wasn't a computer guy.
Really?
Yeah, and he was just too slow and got out of coloring.
That's odd. I always thought how did he do separations? Because
he didn't.
He always was. He didn't.
Before the computer, separations were done elsewhere. This is the days when the coloring was done on Xerox copies with markers or Dr. Martin's dyes. The colors would make a color guide, and then that would be sent off to the color separator or printer somewhere. I don't know when the printers switched over. There we go. There's a color guide.
Okay.
I've got a couple old ones too. Yeah, it's done. That one looks like it's done with marker, right? And you put little numbers on it, little code numbers.
This
So
was
the
towards the
separation-
end. This is towards the end, and we didn't have to put the numbers anymore.
Right. Okay.
So this is at the very end. This is Gambit Annual 12 or Issue 12, and
that's Steve Scroce, right?
yes. So Steve Scroce on it. I colored it. There was, I think, a couple of colorists on it because the book was running late, as always, because it's an X book. And what would happen is, and then that would be sent to Ireland, where the color separation was done there.
Okay, that's when the color separators digitized before the comic book companies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at that point, if it was going to Ireland, they were on computer, color graphics or something like that. We was just used to call them the Irish because that's where they're being sent. So they would get, and here's some color guides from the early 80s that I got. Let me see if I can show you the numbers. This is a backup in Iraq, Son of Thunder. See those MR2D2, and there's codes over here on this side too. That tells the color separator what colors that the colorist wants. And they're usually in the edges. Sometimes they're right on the color themselves. But the colorist would do this, and then it would go off to the color separator, who in the pre-digital days would be making the separations on film, painting the film with different levels of opaque color. And or like right here, the red is YR. So he'd get the red plate and paint red right in that spot, and then paint yellow right in that spot on the yellow color plate. In the early 90s, like I said, the color separators went digital first. So the colorists were still making these. Then they sent these off to the color separator. And then they said, then finally they were like, why is that two different jobs? Why don't we make that one job? So then the colorists all had to learn. Now, color separations now, like when it was digital, it was just Photoshop. Photoshop automatically makes color separations. You work in CMYK, and those are your color separations. So there's really no job to color separating anymore. It's just colorists, and by virtue of working in Photoshop, you get separations from it. So Joe Rosas was really good at this stuff. Like I said, he was I know Jim Lee specifically asked for him on X-Men. He was like the hottest colorist in the early 90s. But he just was no good at Photoshop. He didn't take to it. He didn't like it. He was too slow, and everybody else kind of digitized before him, so he was behind because he was in such demand for this type of coloring that it was the colorists who weren't in such demand that digitized first because they had the time and the motivation to do it. So
I remember. The Brazilians they had their own coloring department because they got the art in black and white,
right?
To print. They knew the original colors, but sometimes they would do some changes either because there was a mistake that came out in the U.S. edition and they would fix it. But if they published something in U.S. format, in U.S. size, they let the original coloring stay. And Joe Rosas was one of the first U.S. colorists that I got used to seeing on a regular basis. So he was very good with gradients and lighting, and that's why I'm surprised that he didn't take to computers as well.
Yeah,
he just didn't. He did not.
And in the early days of computer coloring, before we even got used to the equipment, we were coloring with a mouse, and that was a pain. There was a lot of growing pains on it. Now, I was lucky that I already was playing around with the computer by the time I got into comics. So even though my coloring was really done with with coloring on the regular paper as before. Switching over to the computer was easy for me because I already knew how to use the computer programs because I was already trained with them. And we even back in high school, we were training with early versions of like a Wacom tablet. So I've used a tablet before, but they were completely expensive. The pens were connected to the tablet with wire. And this was even before Photoshop. We were learning how to use that. And then when Photoshop came out, things got easier as they went along, but it was pretty hard. I mean, the files were huge. We would put one book, if we're lucky, on a SideQuest disc, or just the cover, because the covers are huge. The interiors were smaller. So there were these things with the computer, because they were made for one thing, and then we were just using them for comic books. So I think there was this whole learning process as you went along. So it wasn't as easy, because it's like I saw the switch over, and it was slow. Yeah. I think Marvel was one of the last ones to switch over.
Rubylith is sort of a way to. Rubylith was an acetate paper with red ruby color on it that you could cut off. So it was sort of like a sheet of acetate with ruby colored frisket on top of it. So designers would actually use it to indicate where colors go. So the designer would, where he want, like, it wasn't as versatile as like painting on a piece of acetate when they did separations. But like some designers I know used Rubylith so they could control exactly where they wanted the color when they were doing something fancy. Not for comics themselves, but for like magazines around.
Yeah, mainly for ads, I used Rubylith. It was mainly for paste up mechanicals, where you want to indicate like one or two items in color.
Right. Ireland, that's how cheap they were. That mailing the work to Ireland was somehow money making. Wilson, what do you do better? Digital, analog? Digital because it's fast, or physical materials because they are physical? Both?
It really depends on the project itself. I find coloring was so much quicker doing it by hand than it is doing it on a computer, because you got to prepare the artwork on the computer. You got to do flats first. You have to do all these things to it, and then you go in. And as we mentioned on the show before, you can easily zoom in way too many times and spend way too much time on one little thing to zoom out and realize, oh, I spent way too much time on it. So something that would have taken maybe 2 hours to color by hand could take up to 6 or more hours easily on it. So I prefer, but again, it's one of those things where lettering, I don't know what it is like to letter by hand. I only ever lettered on the computer. My handwriting has always been atrocious. So I'm happy that lettering came in on Illustrator so I could do it quicker that way. I do not know if it's any quicker hand computer, but it depends on the project. I prefer to draw on paper when I'm doing pencils. I prefer to ink on paper. I've done it on the computer, but there's certain thing that, for me, I never really learned how to ink on a computer. I tried it. I wasn't getting it. I don't have the same control, even with using a tablet. So for me, I'm okay with the tablet on the artwork if I'm doing corrections. I could go in and manipulate the artwork if I needed to do it that way. But it really depends on the project, to be honest with you. Because there have been times where I'll try it on the computer and go, I can't do this, and just jump on, do it on the paper, draw it out, scan it in, and then go from there.
I have done that too. There's sometimes it's like and it's usually with the curves, some type of curve I'm trying to get on the computer. I'm like, I could get this exact curve in 25 seconds on a piece of paper, and I've just spent 15 minutes trying to get it on the computer. So I go over, get a piece of paper, go whoop, scan it in, and place it right in there. But I hand lettered a lot of my own work, and it always made me go blind. I much prefer digital, but everything else hand. Architectural and foam panel. He knows what Rubylith is. He must be old. Like definitely used in color. Yeah, like I said, I don't think it was ever used in color separations, but it was used by designers mostly. I imagine it was just easier to paint. I guess theoretically you could use it. No, I don't think you could because you need different opacities of the rubylith, because rubylith might just be like 100% red. And if you needed a 50% red, you'd need a rubylith that was 50% of the other one. So I guess that's why they used the paints. Evening Comic Crack.
Oh,
You know that when journalists started using computers, we got a whole worker class fired.
Yeah.
But because even when journalists were using typewriters, then there was another group of workers who were the typists.
Right.
And they were the ones that made those little columns of text. They would write for the column of text to paste it.
Typesetters.
Now, typesetters. And when we started using computers, that job went away because we would create a Word file, and that would be pasted on the pagination program. So, and they would be able to adjust the length of the text to fit on the page. So there goes a bunch of people whose work is not needed anymore.
AFTC did not use rubylith. I actually did.
I use rubylith. It's like, and again, being old enough to watch the technology change, you just have to change with it. In high school, I did a little bit of work for McGraw-Hill, working on encyclopedias, where we were cutting out the galleys and stuff like that so it could be used later for paste-up mechanicals. So there was a job. I mean, we were interns, but there was a job where we were literally cutting out sheets so they could make the paste-ups to eventually, be made into the new sets of encyclopedias. So what is gone? The encyclopedias, the cutting of galleys, whoever was doing the paste-up mechanicals.
Right.
So that's probably a whole department, but probably the whole building on 17th Street that I worked for probably doesn't exist anymore.
Marvel doesn't have a production bullpen anymore.
Right, exactly. So all these things are, you have to move on with the technology. I was having a conversation about AI before. A buddy of mine called me up. He's like, is AI taking your job away? It's like, not anytime soon. Again, the other thing is that it's not really artificial intelligence. That's just the buzzword. So it's like the machines, it is funny that, the machines are the ones that are out there painting and we're the ones, losing our minds trying to figure out what jobs we're going to do next. There's kind of something odd about that in itself.
I like that. I saw some meme where somebody said, I never envisioned a future where the robots were making art and poetry and the rest of us are working menial jobs.
Exactly.
Good evening, Lord Tatman. Oh, no, I have to tell you this because I had to turn it off. Who is it? Comic Book Bookworm, was it? Was interviewing Greg LaRocque.
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know about it.
I turned it on just when I know Paulo's going to laugh at. He probably noticed it too. Just when Sleepy Reader asked him a question, which he liked work betting from plot and full script. And Greg LaRocque was describing the difference between working, from a plot and a full script and Marvel method. And he said the most famous example of modern method is the creation of the Silver Surfer. And he went, Stan Lee just told Jack, Galactus needs a herald. And then Jack went and created the herald. And I went, that's the one that's easy to prove. None of that happened. The very book I showed you a couple weeks ago, Son of Origins of Marvel Comics, Stan Lee did not tell Jack Kirby to invent the Silver Surfer. Stan Lee got the pages back and went, "Who's this silver guy flying around?" And Jack Kirby said, "Well, I figure a guy as powerful as Galactic needs a herald." And Stan Lee went, "That's a great idea," and that's in the book Stan Lee wrote. I'm like, how does he get that wrong?
Yeah, that's one of the problems. How are we supposed to do proper history with comics when the professionals themselves don't know what's going on?
I know. I was just stunned. I couldn't listen to it. I just happened to come on at that part. And
No,
I'm
yeah,
like, listen to this.
it's like Wally Woods used to say that Stan Lee was Martin Goodman's son.
Yeah. I was just like, I can't. I was like, how does he? Like you said, when the professionals don't know the story, how is anybody else supposed to? It was just crazy.
And then how can you correct people without sounding like a madman too?
That's why I had to turn it off. I'm like, me going in there trying to correct Greg LaRocque is not going to do anyone any good.
Exactly. I sit there and I'm flipping through TikTok, and it's like you see something and it's like, that's incorrect. I correct them and sound like a nut job, because again, if you're just saying something in general, people cannot read what's the inflections,
Right.
and you type it quickly, and then you don't want to be the well, actually,
yeah.
and that's, again, it's that craziness to it, and I understand it. And being on this show, I've learned a lot more stuff, and that I thought I knew because I was there, but being told the same thing everybody else has been told.
Right.
For years,
But it's like, and it's like that's the easy one too, the Silver Surfer, because Stan Lee wrote he didn't create the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, but does it really matter to Greg LaRocque who actually created the Silver Surfer? It's not important for him to do his job.
Right.
Who created the comic, the character in which comic and where? I mean, he gets, okay, we want you to draw the Silver Surfer. Okay, here's some spec art for you to look at. Make it interesting. There. So yeah, I get why most people don't care. Even
don't.
fans, some fans, the fans don't care. The official history is interesting enough for them, I suppose, than learning the true facts.
And like what was, it is so hard for somebody to unlearn something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which is why everybody wants to, in the media, wants to control the message, because once something gets into people's heads, it's very hard to get it out, even when the facts come out. And it's just like I was just like, the most famous example of the Marvel method is the Silver Surfer. That's the opposite of the truth. I was like, that's not even one that's in dispute. All the other stuff is in dispute. That one's not in dispute because Stan Lee even told the story of he had nothing to do with the creation of the Silver Surfer. It's just like crazy. But
I think Stan Lee's importance is going to go down over the next 2 decades.
Yeah,
because nobody's actually going to study Stan Lee's writing. Right. But people will always study Jack Kirby's art. There's already a bunch of people dedicated to doing that. That's going to go on. So more people are bound to discover Jack Kirby in the future, now that they're both dead, than Stan Lee. And that best Stan Lee, they will think, oh, Stan Lee's the guy who wrote, but it was Kirby's art that was good. They're going to be impressed with Kirby's art.
It's funny because there was another guy, I think he was Stan Lee's assistant in here, because I don't know if I said this last week or the week before when we were talking about the writer who wrote Flowers for Algernon. I can never remember his name. He worked for Marvel in the 50s. And he said early on he didn't even know that Stan Lee wrote. He's like, I didn't consider him a creative guy. And then there was another guy here who I think was one of Stan Lee's assistants in the 50s, talking about how Daniel Keyes, that's one of them. The interviewer, Will Murray. Stan Lee today is considered one of the great comic book writers. Was he writing many comics in those days, the 50s? Keys, not to my knowledge. He edited, I guess. He was a businessman as far as I was concerned, and a shy businessman is an oxymoron. I never thought of Stan as a writer at all, so that surprises me. Of course, he may have been turning in comics for a few extra bucks, doing it under a pen name so Martin Goodman wouldn't know about it. I never thought of Stan as a writer. He says he created Spider-Man. I never thought of him as a creative person. So it's like everybody who worked, all these other writers and assistants who worked for Marvel in the 50s didn't even know Stan Lee was a writer, except Joe Sinnott, who thought he wrote everything. And someone pointed out to Joe Sinnott, just because Joe Sinnott thought he wrote everything, because when Joe would come in for work, Stan would hand him a script off of the stack on his desk. And they're like, Joe, just because he handed out the work didn't mean he wrote it. And he went, oh, I never thought of that.
Now, the writers that we know from the 50s who did more stuff were Carl Wessler and Hank Chapman. Chapman quit around 55, so he wasn't there when at the Atlas implosion. Then Don Rico wrote a lot of stuff that we don't know about because he didn't sign it and the artist didn't sign for him. And it was the same with Paul S. Newman. But Paul S. Newman wrote for everyone.
Right.
So I don't remember seeing a Daniel Keyes.
I think he was an assistant. I don't think he was a writer. He was Stan's assistant. He explains how he would go and get the word. I assume he was Stan's assistant only because he would say he was liaisoning between Stan and the writers. So I assume he was in the office.
There's a big hole in Stan Lee credits around 51 to 53.
Mm-hmm.
Then they start showing up a little bit more. So after Chapman quits, but before the implosion, you have more stuff signed Stan Lee, especially because by this time he's working with Dan DeCarlo on Millie the Model, and that's probably how they started their working relationship. That got them the Miss Lyons Cubs and Willie Lumpkin newspaper strips.
Daniel Keyes interviewed by Will Murray, alter ego number 13, March 2002. So
yeah, because I have him here working at EC and with Andrew scripting Basil Wolverton stuff.
Yeah, here's Keyes. At first, I just edited them. Writers would come in. I would bring the synopses to Stan. He would choose a number of them, but I was the front man. I would sit up front. I would deal with the script writers, the artists. They would bring the stuff to me. I would bring them back to Stan. I was the go-between. Eventually, I started writing them. I was pretty good at it. We worked our asses off. I'd get the synopses. I'd read them and select a number, bring them to Stan. He would then weed them out again. He had a regular stable, so he gave preferences to those. Usually they were all written by the same writers. So he was working in the office, definitely, and a writer eventually.
Mm-hmm. But there was a team of writers. Those four that I mentioned, they're the ones that are usually the ones that are best, easier to identify. There was a guy who has a blog. He managed to identify a bunch of Jack Olek stuff from the second half of the 50s, because nothing of it was signed, and he managed to identify, because he tries to find out how the writers write, and we usually think, okay, let's see if this plot resembles another, but that's irrelevant because these guys are doing 5-pagers and they're copying radio shows and TV shows and whatever. So they go by the number of exclamation points they have when somebody yells, or how many G's and H's are in an ah.
And probably word patterns too, and word usage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, some writers have favorite words.
The name of the blog, it's Who Wrote the Comics, something like that. Let me check. Who wrote the... No.
Machine learning algorithm is more appropriate for AI, that is. I like to imagine the T100 clicking a mouse all day. There's a good AI image. Even in death, Stanley is a virus. Fuck him, correct him. He isn't royalty. Yeah, you can correct him.
Wait, no.
It's like breaking the news to a bunch of 60-year-olds that Santa Claus isn't real. If you repeat a lie enough, it becomes truth. Hitler knew this, and Stan Lee knew this. Right? Keyes? Yeah, that's the guy who worked in the office, Daniel Keyes. I'd never heard of him before this book. After the machines, perfect art and writing are going to destroy us. King's Poet's here. How you doing, King's Poet? Oh, interesting. What's the name of the blog?
Okay, I have it here. It's called "Who Created the Comic Books," but it's easier to look for the author, Martin O'Hearn, because it's martinohearn.blogspot.com.
Martin O'Hearn?
Yeah.
Okay. First name. I actually got some really old comics this week that I don't remember how. It was a few years ago. I made one of my taking a look videos where I look through, art book, whatever. But I made a taking a look video out of some of the most busted up old comics I had. Because I was like, you know what? I don't open these very often because they're so brittle and old. I'm like, I may as well make a video of me looking through them. Mm-hmm. So I did a couple of those, and there's a YouTuber named Sarge TD. He's not on much anymore. And back then, he's like, oh, I got some old brittle comics I was getting rid of if you want them. He mailed them to me, and I made some videos showing those ones. So just like he hasn't been on YouTube in a couple of years, but I just got a message from him on YouTube like a couple of weeks ago saying, hey, I got some more old comics if you want me to send them to you. I was like, sure, why not? I'll make some videos out of them. But I just got them, and there's a bunch of old Dells. I've never seen them before. I'm going to look up a little information on them before I make a video about them. But this is The Flying A's Range Rider 10-cent book. So they're old. Another, let's see, Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan. I don't think there's numbers on Dells, right? September, October.
I love those painted covers. I always enjoy looking at those covers.
Yeah,
number
but then
114. Okay, there is a number on the inside.
But then it's false advertising because you open up art is.
But they're battered. They're falling apart. And here's one. I wonder if this is one of those returns where you send back the logo. This is Strange Adventures, DC number 136, 1962. But it's like the logo. Most of the ones I've seen with the logo torn off were torn off more neatly than this.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not everybody did it neatly. But I wonder if this is one of those torn logos ones where they would sent the logo back for credit. Or if it was just torn up by some angry mother. My neighbor used to do that to her kids. Let's see, what do we got? Oh, the back. The back is detached on this one. The New Adventures of Tinkerbell. Walt Disney's. 1959. Oh, it looks like there's some initial. I don't know if you can see it. It's written lightly. There's a 5-cent there, and then a 3-cent over here.
Well, the book did not sell. They kept lowering the prices the longer months it was on there.
Pardon me. There's a 6 cents crossed out. There's a 5 cents crossed out, and there's a 3 cents. What's this other? There's another thing crossed out, but it looks like it says BD. I don't know what that is. But yeah, and then let's see. Two more to go. We got Annie Oakley and Tag. Oh, this one was Patty's. It's got Patty next to it. I like old comics with writing on them. Oh, Patty's on the helmet, too. I mean, the hat. Patty really wanted you to know this was her comic.
Patty and Bobby?
And Bobby?
And Patty and Bob, but Bobby's crossed out.
Yeah, that was the young boyfriend who got kicked out.
Yeah, Bobby, he may have been good at the beginning, but And no, it's weird too. The Patty and Bobby is in cursive, but the Patty is in whatever they call print. There we go.
So I bet you Patty and Bobby was brothers and sister. They both here got it from a relative. It's like, here, these are for you. And Patty's like, no, this is mine.
That could be it.
I would bet that would be it.
I was thinking that your story is much more apt to be true. That my story was a little more involved, where Patty got this when she was a kid, wrote Patty on it. Then she got a little bit older when she learned script and wrote Patty and Bobby for some reason. I guess she had a crush on Bobby. But then Bobby did something wrong and she crossed it off. But I think your story is the odds are better.
Yeah, because you don't want to share your stuff with the other sibling. You can easily see here, these are for both of you.
Right. I can see that.
Yeah, but probably didn't want a comic about girls.
Right. Atomic Mouse.
Ooh, an Atomic publication. Very cool.
Let's see, when is this from? Published quarterly, volume 1, number 32, 1959. So I'll make some videos over the summer looking through these ones. First, I'm going to have to look up who did them, because I have no idea.
I have like an X-Men number 3. I believe that's the first appearance of the Blob. I got it from some collection that like a neighbor had a bunch of books, and they were just all torn up books, and I happen to have that one. And can't open it, can't read it. It is literally just would fall apart in your hands. And it's like, it's neat to say I have this really old X-Men book, but at the same time, it's like, there is no reading this thing. I haven't looked at it in decades, but all I remember is like it's crumbling in my hands. You know, I was able to get it into the bag and board just so it's somewhat protected. Yeah. But it's like,
you got to make a video of it before it crumbles completely.
Yes, I definitely, you know, when you were talking about making videos for old comics like that, it's like, yeah, because I do have a set of books without covers. I had bought a bunch of them just I saw them on eBay. They were pretty inexpensive. And I thought, oh, let me get a bunch of these. Maybe I'll make some covers with them type of thing. And it was like, but I was not able to tell if these were like part of someone's collection or were they returns. And usually, as you mentioned, with returns, maybe just the front cover is missing or just the logo. But sometimes I have seen it where it's the whole front cover,
right.
The back cover was still attached. And this is and you could see how the back cover could eventually fall off of it as well.
I think first it was whole cover, and then they made it just the logo. Mm-hmm. Then it was, I swear I destroyed the book.
Yeah, I'm not selling it for I'm not selling it for $20 to that comic shop.
Right. Oh, yes, I remembered Keyes, but I incorrectly thought it was Alan Keyes. Yep, Keyes. I'd never heard of that. What was his first name again? Richard Keyes, who worked for Stan in the 50s? No idea. How old are they? Cool, thanks, Paulo. Badum. It's like these sleazy Italian fumetti, incredible covers, but the interiors are pretty sketchy. Yeah, that's what you get when you get a fully painted Dell cover, and then the insides are like, I can't keep. I love defaced comics. I have an issue of Uncanny 117 in which every depiction of Storm's hair is meticulously colored with green bullhorn pen by the previous owner. Like I said, my favorite is I think I made a video of it. I've got a old Kirby Thor that has shit or get off the pot on it multiple times, and then classic bathroom humor poet. Here I sit all brokenhearted, tried to shit and only farted on the back cover, and then like one of those ads they filled in a fake name that had to do with duty jokes too. Oh, I love that. It's one of my favorites. Amazing. One of his most prized comics. Did you make it to the comic shop this week, Paulo? Paulo
No.
Wilson.
No.
Well, Paulo didn't. He doesn't have comic shops.
I did make it to the comic book shop.
Wow.
I was actually going through my books today because one, I wanted to actually start reading them, and two,
And it was a fifth week at the comic shop. For those of you who don't know what that is, when a month has 5 Wednesdays in that, often Marvel and DC have like no books coming out. I think DC had literally 0 books out this week. Sometimes they do fifth week events. I remember they did that in the past. I don't know when the last time they did that. But whenever, because most months have 4 Wednesdays in them. And so the books come out monthly on the first, second, third, fourth Wednesday of the month. But when there's a 5th Wednesday, oh well, not as much stuff comes out.
Yep. So I went to Midtown. So I picked up some books. We got Spider-Man 26.
Uh-huh.
Spider-Man. If you go by TikTok and everywhere else in the on the internet, it's the most hated comic book and comic book.
Yeah.
No idea what's going on. I mean, I have a general idea what's going on, but I haven't actually read these yet. We have Clobbering Time number 3. This time is The Thing and Doctor Strange. So this is basically The Thing's team-up book.
Mm-hmm.
Venom Lethal Protector number 3.
Uh-huh. A Steranko piggyback?
Yep. And Danny Ketch, Ghost Rider, which is a book I actually read.
Oh, wow.
And I enjoyed it a lot. Okay. And then as I'm going through it, it was written by Howard Mackey,
right?
Who's written Ghost Rider before. So for me, it was like revisiting an old friend because the art is very similar to what it was when I was reading that first Ghost Rider run in the 90s. So for me, it was like, it wasn't in my pull box. It was something that I saw on the shelf, and I was like, I got to give it a try. And I read it today, and I truly enjoyed it.
That's good.
Like, this might go onto my pull box. And then outside of the comic book shop, I happened to be at a Dollar Tree, and I found that they have a comic of their own. Pull it out of the so it comes
a Dollar Tree comic, or is it just
Dollar Tree comic?
Wow!
And it's in one of those resealable packages.
Who knew there was such a thing as a Dollar Tree comic?
Now, what it is related to a Dollar Tree set of toys.
Right. Final Faction, First Impact.
So very similar to, I guess, G.I. Joe versus Aliens, for the lack of a better term. I haven't read it, but I do know that I've seen the toys. And again, they're action figures that you're paying $1 for.
Right.
So I don't know if I could get a better shot of it because they're so tiny.
Yeah. That's as good as we're going to get.
Right. So they're action figures that they sell at the Dollar Tree. So, they're $1.25 or whatever. But they made some comic books, or they made a comic book to basically talk about the toy. And as I mentioned, like G.I. Joe versus Aliens is the closest thing that I could come up to.
Who did? Does the comic have credits? Who did it?
The comic does have credit on the back page. And they're not anyone that I'm aware of. So Toby Osborne is the writer.
Okay.
Penciled by Chris Marinin. Inked assist by Luis Rivera. Colorist Mimi Simon. Letterers are John Hebink and Mike Manley. I know Mike Manley in comics.
He's an artist, right?
Yeah, but this says lettering by them. And then there's a spoof ad page, and the artist is Peter McDonald. So
Mike Manley replaced Paul Ryan after Ryan died as the Phantom artist.
So the artwork is very they're going for a very comic book style that almost reminds me of a Jack Kirby face there.
Yeah.
Jack Kirby joined the Baroness type of thing. Now, granted, this is my initial reaction. This is the first time I opened it, so I don't know Um,
And that Venom cover has more piggybacks in it, AFPC tells us. I just noticed the Steranko one at a first glance. So it's got
Yeah.
some Golden and Liefeld in there too. Interesting.
So there's typical regular comic book art. I have a little problem with the lettering, but that's me as a letterer. I can
Let's
see
get
where
up.
the problems are. But here's some of the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to do a full review later. But my initial gut reaction is that I like this.
For
the
$1, you'll take it.
For $1, I'll take, or $1.25 because the prices have gone up in the Dollar Tree.
Okay.
But again, comic books with action figures, I think is definitely a no-brainer. They should always do it. I go back to the He-Man books, He-Man toys came with miniature comic books.
Right.
So I'm a big fan of comics and toys. I do not know because I didn't see the toys, so I do not know if the toys themselves come with comic books. But again, if you have a section with toys and you have a section with comics, I think without reading it, without knowing the story, I think it's a win in general.
Comic Crack wants to know if there's any new comics in Paulo's paws.
No, it turns out I can't make it to the comics festival this weekend because my card does not cooperate. But I will be buying one of the books by that's coming out there by a Portuguese artist. It's a book about the second coming of Jesus Christ, and it's called Holy Shit, I'm Back. And I will be buying that. It's a 300-page graphic novel.
He tried to pick up Santos Sisters #4 this weekend, but my shop said they didn't order any copy. I think I picked up issue 3 of that and was amused by it, but I didn't see #4 because I picked up 3 off the shelf. But I guess my shop didn't get any of 4 in because I didn't see it either. Very cool art in Clobbering Time. All the more piggybacks in that cover that I didn't. Who's on art in Clobbering Time? He wants to know. Oh, the Venom cover.
You want to know about the Venom cover?
Yeah, who did the art on it?
Give me a second.
Hold on. He doesn't have his on the end of his nose like I do.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to have to look on the inside because the signature you cannot read. What you can read is after. It says after Steranko and Golden.
Okay.
So you could easily read who he's crediting. So let's see if I can find a credits page that lists the cover artist.
And Steve Scroach is the artist on Clobbering Time. Yeah, I've picked up his stuff before when he does indie things. Steve Scroach, he's pretty good. Where does Paulo buy his comics? When I was overseas in the Caribbean in the late 2000s, only very few bookstores sold them, and pharmacies at the magazine stands.
I have 2 stores in Lisbon, so I live 25 miles from the capital city, and so there are always places where you can. There used to be places where you could get newsstand editions of Marvels and DCs, but we do have 2 comic stores that sell new comics. They come out twice a month, and they also have a good set of trade paperback collections that I can go through. And there are a couple of mega stores that have U.S. collected editions, but they don't order them. They're like distributed like their books, so you never know what you're gonna get. But most of the stuff that in those mega stores, most of the space is taken up by manga nowadays.
Yeah, you don't have that much opportunity to pick up individual comics, do you? Like individual issues?
No. And I basically stopped years ago, and I'm not interested in reading like that again. If I get into a series, I'll get all of the collected volumes.
Right.
I can also buy comics in French, and then of course we have the Portuguese publishers who usually try to do stuff nowadays they do stuff that at expensive levels, and they try to go for things with established quality. So right now it's easier to get the rights to European comics than US ones.
Mm-hmm. A gun-toting poses a notorious Liefeld swipe from Golden. Originally Roadblock from G.I. Joe, which Liefeld used for a New Mutants cover featuring Cable. So it's Liefeld swiping Golden mixed with Steranko, too.
Mhm.
So this does not seem to credit the artist on the cover. I don't know, and I'm pretty sure they have multiple covers on the stand.
Yeah.
Now on the inside,
Oh, look at the UPC. It'll tell you which variation it is. It goes issue number, printing, and then cover variation.
I guess this must be the regular cover because I don't see any variations on there.
Well, no. It's in if the UPC ends with like this UPC ends with 00111. That means first printing, first issue, cover A.
Okay. So this is cover 3 because it's 00311.
Okay. And it's issue 1, right? No, what issue number is it?
This is issue number 3.
Okay, so the 00 is 3, and then 11 is first printing, and then cover A, right?
It doesn't have anything like A, B.
Oh no. If it's 03, that's the issue number. Then
Right.
the next one is the printing, which is first printing, and the final one is the cover version. If it's 1, then it's cover A. So whoever says Drew cover A in there, if they say it.
Right, it does not. That's where the problem is. It does not. Now the next issue 4, it does have it looks like it's the same artist because the signature is similar. So it looks like it says Paulo or Paul Zo, P-A-U. I don't know. It looks like a Z or a 7-O. It's just a weird signature that probably can't
make
even
it
get
bigger.
it.
Hold on.
Let's see if we make it bigger.
Or is it over there? Okay, I can't tell.
Yeah, so
we're gonna have to look it up on the Grand Comic Book Database or something.
Mm-hmm. So, and then on the cover, it's even worse because it's within the artwork. So you can't really read it because he went all Steranko artsy on there. So,
but this one I was just showing you is one I got this week. It's a Rocketeer special. And I don't usually buy the Rocketeer except for the Dave Stevens stuff at the beginning. But this one, besides having a Dave Stevens cover, has a 8-page Dave Stevens story. I mean, Dave Stevens. Adam Hughes cover has an 8-page Adam Hughes story in it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So for all the people who say they want to see some Adam Hughes interiors, here's at least a few pages of Adam Hughes interiors. There's one of his Rocketeer drawings. So we get Adam Hughes, Craig Cermak, who I have never noticed his name before, but I got 2 Craig Cermak books here this week, and he's good. He does the middle story, and then Jay Lee does the end story. And it's nice they have the covers in the back, too, as pinups. I always appreciate that. Rather than ads, you can get the covers, the alternate covers, printed in the back.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I like that.
There's all the. I like that. I like that idea a lot. Opus does that with the Frank Frazetta books, and I really like them. I'm glad they did it too. But this is just a one shot, and I just happened to see it in my final order cut off, and I clicked on it just to see what it was, and they were like Adam Hughes, Jay Lee. I was like, all right, I'll get that. Like I said, Craig Cermak's name didn't do anything for me, but his art is nice. And he also did this right here. This came out last week. The Archie horror stuff. Jinx, A Cursed Life. He did this cover too. And this was real. This was probably the best of the Chilling Adventures that I've read, because I think Archie has done a really nice job with their horror stuff, and they have some really nice covers on it too. And Craig Cermak drew this one. Let's see, story by Magdalene Visaggio, line art by Craig Cermak, colors by Ellie Wright, letters by Jack Morelli, a bullpenner in the '80s at Marvel, still doing lettering. And it was Jinx is supposed to be the daughter of the devil, maybe. Maybe he's the devil, maybe he's not. He's some kind of crazy demon creature. And in this one, she with her friend, they're trying. Here they are. They're starting a punk band. Her and her friend. Homework sucks. It really sucks. Parents suck. So there she is in her garage, starting a punk band. And then Archie shows up, because she's got some sort of reputation in Riverdale where she handles occult everybody ostracizes her. And she's like a 14-year-old girl too. Everybody ostracizes her except when they need a problem that needs to be handled. So Archie showed up to hire her to exorcise Jughead. Because there's something wrong with Jughead. He's got a demon in him or something. And she and her friend go over there, and she's like, none of this stuff is real. This occult stuff isn't real. And she shows up at Jughead's, and it turns out it's her father, who may or may not be the devil, and who may or may not be her father, is the one possessing Jughead. So she has to do something. But I really enjoyed this story. It was probably the best, and I generally enjoy the Chilling Adventures when I get them. But I think this was the best of the Chilling Adventures. It was really well written and really well drawn. Here's a nice splash page of her playing demonic guitar. And here's something I only found out. They're doing a Bollywood version of the Archies that you'll get to watch on Netflix. And then I looked a film by Zoya Akhtar. It's like a completely Indian cast because it's made in India. But I looked up. I was like, really? And I looked up because I didn't know if that was a parody ad or not. So I looked it up to see what it was, and I didn't realize that it's actually controversial in India because the Indian film industry is filled with nepotism. And it's like everybody starring in that show is some famous actor or director's kid. I was like, I
gotta say, I'm really impressed by what Archie has been doing with their product. You know, they have something that's been the same for over 50 years, 75 years, I guess it is.
And they've still got that if you want it.
Yeah, and that still exists. But the Chilling Adventure stuff, or even like, I like crossovers. So when they had it with Predator and
right.
They're willing to be silly, they're willing to be serious, and then they're willing to like try new things. The whole thing with the horror stuff is fascinating.
Yeah,
to watch, and it's like, all right, you're almost treating them like actors, and you're putting them into various situations. And I think they do a good job with that.
And they're generally pretty good comics.
Yeah,
the Archie horror stuff. I have to say, I bought a bit of it. So let's see what we got going on here. Yeah, I think our two separate. Did that Dave Stevens documentary come out? Not that I know of. I vaguely remember hearing about one now that you mention it, but I haven't heard anything that it's out or not.
Yeah, I saw that there was like on Facebook just before I got on the show. There was someone was putting photos of Dave at a convention where he was wearing the Rocketeer costume, like he was cosplaying his own character. I don't know if that was for the documentary or it was just that someone found an image and posted it up of Dave Stevens.
You want Adam Hughes interiors? Just change stable diffusion on his work for a few days. Huh. Didn't someone did that and got people mad with that Korean artist who died last year? What was his name? The guy who drew those really intricate drawings.
Oh, his name escapes me, but I know who you're
Yeah, I
talking
can't because I didn't really know him that well. He died suddenly last year. Not a very old guy too. It was like days after he died. Somebody trained Stable Diffusion with all his art to me and called it. And then a lot of his fans got really pissed.
Mm-hmm.
We got a team working on that prompt right now.
I've done some Alex Ross that kind of looks like Alex Ross.
Yeah.
This Stable Diffusion is actually pretty good at doing. Who's the painter guy? Who was the painter guy?
Which painter? Alex Ross? Oh,
No, Joe Jusko.
Joe Juska. I think the more sort of smooth and realistic the paint style, the easier it is for Stable Diffusion.
Yeah, I tried Alfredo Alcala. It's not Alfredo Alcala.
Yeah. New sensation recommendation that Colin turned me on to. Rave Sense, new channel recommendation. Rave Sensation. Okay. Check that one out. That Archie horror is when I read it. Archie. Smallwood stuff on Vampironica years ago was really fun. Yeah, they've been doing some fun stuff. What? I'm all over that. Love Bollywood. Yeah. Archie horror is okay when I read it. Yeah, I say too. I don't read it all, but when I pick it up, like the cover on this one actually caught my eye last week. But I had 12 comics on my pull list last week, so I'm like, not getting it. This week I had like 3 comics on my pull list. So I'm like, where's that one from last week? Found it. I knew they weren't selling out of it. I love raves. But good stuff. Yeah, only 5 comics this like I said, it was a 5th week. That must be why there was only 5 for me, but it allowed me to stock up on some comic book bags too, so I did that. Bought a pack of 100. Because who likes to buy comic book bags if you've got like 12 comics on your pull list already?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have to worry about bags because a few years ago I had purchased a major set of bags. Back when I was selling more of my stuff on eBay and stuff like that, it's like, oh, I should bag a lot of these, not bag and board them.
Right.
Boarding them would just give them more weight, but I wanted to bag a lot of them, so I ended up buying a large amount of bags, and so I don't really have to worry about bags. But I do need to get more short boxes. Those I ran out pretty quick, and then now that I'm getting books on a more regular basis, it's like, oh, I got to get a few more of the short boxes.
I got to build some more shelves. Matter of fact, whoops. See this hallway right back here? Mm-hmm. I'm going to put shelves up above the doors.
Oh,
so,
okay.
You know what? This hallway is useless. There's nothing in here. It's just a pass through, to get out the back door. I'm like, I could put shelves up there and stack a bunch of books up this. That's my next shelf I'm going to build.
Nice.
Because I love shelves. Allows me to see what I've got.
Yeah, I can understand that. I was recently like, I don't know if you do it with your books, but do you get the digital books? Do you redeem the digital ones that are in here?
I don't buy any with redeemable digital in it,
mm-hmm.
But my friend Rob does. He actually like the Marvel books always come with digital, and so he'll redeem it and then he'll get rid of the comic if he doesn't want to keep it. So he'll always redeem his digitals and then get rid of the comic. But I usually bootleg the digital. I get the digital version of the comics I bought. So it's like maybe once a month I'll go to a bootleg site and download the digital versions of the comics I bought for no reason except just to have them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why shouldn't I have a digital version of it? I paid $4 for it.
So it's like, I've done it before on the other books that I had where I would redeem them, but I don't read them digitally. I just
Right.
using the code, I get them. And so recently, Marvel made a change because, why fix something that isn't broken? That their digital download thing, they're changing whatever app they used to use to a new app.
Oh, that's because Comixology did their app.
Right. So their new app, it's not, for me, I don't find it easy to navigate through
Right.
because it's like, all right, I already bought these books. I don't want to subscribe to their system, but it's like they almost trick you into subscribing because it's like it tells you you do not have to be a member to redeem. So when you go on the site, you have all these things that say, join us, do a subscription, do this, this, and that. And it's like, maybe if I really wanted to, if I was reading stuff more often, I would do it, but I don't really need to now. So you go in, you click a few buttons, you find a workaround. It's there. It's just harder to get to, and then you can get to the site, and it's okay. It's easy to navigate. It looks fine on the iPad, which is what I prefer to read it. The iPhones it's just too small for me, and I really would prefer it on the computer. And it says it's really built for the iPad and for the iPhone, but you can look at it on the computer. It just doesn't tell you can, but you can. So it's one of those things where it's like it was a little hard to navigate through to find the books I've already purchased. And what's weird is I'm almost sure almost every series you look at, you can read the first issue for free. It's the next issue where you can't read unless you have that subscription. But it was just a little bit of a navigational problem to find the stuff that I already purchased.
Right.
And because it has a due date of when you can redeem it, I kind of forget about it. So the next thing you know, I got a pile of books, and so I'm on a Friday and I'm going through them all, kind of like put them up there and redeem them. Again, I don't really read it all that much, but if I have access to it, I want to have access to it.
Right. You want them since you bought them.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's like, just make it a little easier. And what's funny is that you go through it and it's like, oh, there's a book I worked on. Let me take a look at it because I haven't looked at it in years. And of course, it's not credited to me. It's credited to the colorist who was supposed to do the project. But they lost the artwork. So I colored it over the weekend, but they never changed the credit on there. So it's like, I can't even, it's not that big of a deal because there was a retraction in the next issue, but whoever reads those, whoever reads the back of the page where it says, oh, the colorist was really this person. So you look at it, you look at the credits, and it's like, I mean, I'm from a time period where I wouldn't get residuals anyway.
Right.
Because they didn't start giving that to colorists until more recent. But it's
they give colorists residuals, I guess, now that they don't have to do it for inkers.
They started doing it when I heard about it, and I never looked into it anymore.
Right.
By the time I heard about it, I already had stopped working on coloring, and my books were already out there.
Right.
So it's like, I was part of that group where they weren't giving it to them. Are they giving them to them now? I have no idea.
Okay.
All I know is that the books that I worked on, I don't get free copies of them when they print them in omnibuses. And then are artists getting any of the digital money?
Yeah, I don't know.
Most likely not, because I have no idea. So you look at it and it's like, I could understand why there are why the writer's strike is going on and those different strikes going on, because, this digital platform changes so many things where I don't think it replaces comics in general. It replaces physical comics, because I still know people who will buy only physical copies.
Right.
You got some people that are full digital, which is fine. Right now and then you have people who will double dip because they want them both. Because this, for me, it's easier to look up something digitally than it is to go looking through the collection. So it's like I could see the appeal of wanting to go full digital, especially if you don't have the room for it. So again, it's like it's amazing, and at the same time, it's not as easy to navigate through as Comixology was easy. Comixology was very easy to
Yeah,
navigate.
well, look at Amazon shut down Comixology, so
Yeah,
or are in the process of. But the one place I do read digital is on Hoopla, the library app. And this is actually what I read this week. It's got a nice cover. Cover's the nicest piece of art. Whoop, hold on. Come on, go back here. What did you do? I somehow took a screenshot of it to edit. What? There we go. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. By who did it? Zoe Thorogood. I'm not familiar with her work, but she's done other things. Somebody in the book thinks she's the future of comics, but she took 6 months of her life to make into a comic book. I think she's from England too, because she took a plane trip to America at one point. But the first half of it was really tough because she's been suicidal since she's been 14, and I think she's 23 in this book. So a lot of it is her, letting you inside her head. And when somebody's depressed and suicidal, one of the things they don't want to do is let you inside in their head. So it's kind of like there's this push-pull going on with the audience, where a couple of times I put it down because I was just like, why am I reading this? It's so tedious, because that's where her life is, really tedious. The second half of the book picked up, and I liked it better. She actually kind of did stuff, forced herself to do things. Actually took a trip to the USA to visit another depressed cartoonist who she kind of liked. So it was kind of tough to get through the first half, not because it was particularly bad, but because the inner mind of someone who's been depressed and suicidal since they're 14 is tough. It's not it's not a fun, happy story. And she even mentions that a lot of times. She's like, I wish I could give you a happy ending, or I wish I could give you a lesson I learned that made everything better, but there's no such thing. So, but I tell you, I really do like the cover of it. That's what first caught my eye of it. I think on Amazon I was looking at, or I may have come up in one of my social medias, and then I bookmarked it and put it on my wish list on Amazon. Then saw it was on Hoopla, and said I'll read it digitally. But it's funny. My habit on Hoopla is I think you get, I can't remember if it's 8 or 10 borrows a month. Sometimes they give you extra, where you can borrow 8 or 10 things digitally: movies, audio books, comics, regular books. So what I always do is I wait, like I just did it 3 days ago. I wait till like the end of they send you email like, don't forget to use up your borrows by the end of the month. So when the end of the month comes around, I'll just borrow a bunch of stuff. And if I get around to reading it, I get around to reading it. If not, at the end of the next month, I'll borrow it again. So it's like I've had some stuff that I've re-borrowed for like 3-4 months before I get around to reading it. Just because I don't always like reading digitally, and I got plenty of stuff to read physically. So it's kind of like, But that one I got around to. And it was okay.
Very cool. I haven't read comics that way. I usually get them physically from the library, but I am aware of the various apps that you can use for the library.
Hoopla's a library app, which it works with your local library, where you can then borrow stuff through it. So that's what's good about it, is it's free.
Yeah.
So let's see what people have had to say. Oh, they've been saying a lot. Love Bollywood. Paulo Costa, been addicted to a track by them called Terror Blue.
I have no idea. The last time, it's been almost 10 years since I found any new music. I got bored with when the Progressive House guys started doing Tech House. I got bored with them, so I basically focused on post Kuduru. The last projects that I cared about were Angolan electronic music projects, Batida and Media Minaj. After that, zip.
Nothing. Your piano got too hard. Get your glow sticks at the ready. You know them, AFC? Hostile music I'm really into, and I'm addicted to their stuff this week. I like a lot of music. Yeah, if you're into house, booty, extraneous stuff. That's what happens. I read the physical and the digital Marvel redeemed books after. Yeah, it's good. You know, if you're going to buy the physical ones, you may as well redeem the Marvel. Why not? Physical only, baby. Yeah. They're not receiving any residuals for digitally published downloaded work. Oh, what joy. I bought Center of the Earth today. Oh, okay. That's cool. Jeff Bezos and Carl with pendulous balls. Universe, sorry. Unionize Amazon. I think, matter of fact, I think Joe Rosas works at Amazon these days. Depressed? I prescribe a full run of Silver Surfer and Cult 44.
Which Silver Surfer?
As far as humor goes, suicide jokes are definitely the funniest. Not a lot of them in there when you're. But yeah, good. Like that's how I read my digital. I've read more digital stuff on Hoopla than any other way, I think.
Mhm.
But I don't like. That's the first one I read. First one of my May borrows that I read. So it's like I don't get around to it. I don't get around to it. But I like to use them just to have them there. And I download like stuff that I'd never ever read in real life. Like one of the things I think I downloaded was the Marvel Mandalorian series. Now I liked the TV show, but I got no interest in reading and getting that. But I saw it there. Well, maybe we'll give it a read on Hoopla one day.
Yeah, there's like back when Comixology was working well, and they would have like events and stuff like that, and I would download all the free stuff that they would give out. And I know, like, not that
They had
long
like
ago, they did the Black Panther
yeah,
whole series. There, like, I downloaded all of it. I
me
read
too.
maybe 2 or 3 of the Kirby books. I just never went back to it. But it was like I just liked the idea of that being available.
I'm just a digital hoarder
Mhm.
because it costs nothing and doesn't take up any physical space. So it's like once again, it was Amazon/Comixology for like 3 days had a special where every Black Panther book ever was free.
Mhm.
So it's like, all right,
There
why not?
have been a couple of mistakes where somebody puts $1 in some books and everybody buys them for that dollar. And then they can't say, "Oh, it was a mistake," because it was advertised that way.
Is Star Wars actually a prison? I don't know, but my guy who works at my comic shop was just telling me there was who the people who collect Star Wars comics today are completists. They want every miniseries, every cover, everything of Star Wars. So that might be a prison. I'm not sure, but he said they're real completists, like they never were before. I was like, interesting. Let's see what else. I got Local Man number 4, which I've been. There's which I've been. This has been sort of the murder mystery one where a disgraced superhero has to move back to his hometown. He's not allowed to be a superhero, but he's trying to figure out what happened. And I definitely have enjoyed it. Who is it? Tim Seeley and Tony Fleece, Fweecs, created and written by, and it's got a really nice look to it. I think the Tony Fleece side. I didn't realize Tim Seeley was an artist too, but he's drawing this a third gen art. He's drawing like the 6 or 8 page 1990s stories in the back. But this had one of the dumbest modern tropes in comic books. To spoil a scene for you, because no one's reading this but me anyway. This local man, what was his name? His superhero name was not Dead. It was Cross something, but he's basically like a Deadshot or a Taskmaster, where he's automatically good with every weapon, except the bow and arrow for some reason. He's got a psychological reason behind that. Crossjack, that was his superhero name, and this is the guy in front is like the Superman type guy who ran the super team he was on. What's his name? Camo Crusader, and he's a real Christian white nationalist guy. He's in public he's just a Christian. In private he's a Christian white nationalist. Not the nicest guy in the world. But like I said, he's a Superman character. Bullets bounce off him. He can lift a truck, but then Crossjack kills him by shooting him in the eye with an arrow. I'm always like, why does the bulletproofness not extend to his eyes? It's something I've seen before. It's like writers like to do that, especially in the early 2000s, when they were all sort of under Warren Ellis's influence, and the Ultimates was big and stuff like that, where they're trying to make everything more realistic. And they even had an explanation for it in Ultimate X-Men versus I don't forget who, Shield or something. There was one scene where I think it was Nick Fury was taking on the Ultimate X-Men, or it may have been Hawkeye. Maybe it was Ultimate X-Men. It was somebody much lower, and he did something where he got up right next to Colossus and like put a gun on his eye, and he's like, "If I shoot you in the eye, it's going to go right to your brain because there's no way an eye would work if it was metal." And I'm like, well, there's no way skin would work if it was metal. So I always found that baffling. That it's like there's this sort of, it's like I'm like, if whatever magic superhero thing made you have invulnerable skin, why wouldn't it extend to your eyes? I know your eyes isn't skin, but skin can't be bulletproof to begin with, so why not just extend it to you? I just always found that strange.
Yeah, I find the more you try to make it real,
the harder
it is to do, the less believable it is.
Right. And there's actually some, specifically that eye part in Ultimate Avenger is what I call micro-realism.
Yeah.
Where we're trying to make this one little part as real as possible, but it makes the whole much less real.
Exactly. And like, it just, to me, it just seems like, did you write yourself into a corner and you needed to do something? And it to me, it's like, I don't know if you remember that series called Ruins, where it was like, what if the Marvel Universe went wrong? And it was kind of like the opposite of Alex's Ross Marvels. And it was like, okay, here's what would happen realistically. If Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider, he would die from the radiation. So it's like, then that wouldn't be a fun story. And then it's like, you're making it too real. And I get in one aspect how you want to write comics, but when one thing is successful, then all of a sudden everyone tries to do that same thing, and it just doesn't work. Dark Knight Returns wasn't successful because it was dark and gritty. It was just a deconstruction of Batman.
It was successful because Frank Miller did it well.
He did it well. And then it's like,
Lynn Varley
so that means everything has to be dark.
Did Klaus ink him was Klaus still inking him then on Dark Knight Returns?
I don't think
I can't remember.
Have on the first book. I don't know if he inked them.
Or was Daredevil the last time Klaus inked?
Daredevil might have been the last time, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I'm not either. I really can't remember. But
Luckily,
I
I'm
think
in front of a
the
computer
eye
and I can look
thing-
it up now.
the eye thing really is a trope where when you've got a character like Crossjack clearly could not beat Camo Crusader in a fight because Camo Crusader is just a power level or two above him. So it's like they had to give him a way to be able to defeat him. So they went, oh, his eyes. It's like no villain has ever thought of that before.
Oh, please.
Shoot him in the eye.
I thought of that idea back when I was a kid reading comics. How can you kill Wolverine? You shoot him in the eye and the bullet will go through the adamantium and go back and forth.
Ricochet all around.
No,
The Dark Knight
the most
Returns
ridiculous.
was inked by Klaus.
What was that?
The Dark Knight Return was inked by Klaus.
Okay.
The most ridiculous stuff I heard about Wolverine's healing factor was during Morrison's run, where the guy said that he spent 6 months stuck in on an orbiting satellite, cutting strips of himself and eating them, and he would just grow back. I don't think they implicate. Then there was discussion on the internet what the implications of absorbing everything that you eat means that Wolverine doesn't poop.
If America is the labor camp, Star Wars is the warden. Ooh, let's play rock, paper, scissors, bullet, arrow. Not in the heel. Yeah, they got to give him an Achilles heel or they can't beat him. That's because all the premises are for children, guys. There we go. That's an eye roll. Jansen inks are among my favorite. Charming. Yeah, I like Jansen inks generally.
Yeah.
Not always, but he definitely had his own style. He was definitely good over Miller, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because it's like, everyone praises Miller on Daredevil, but it's like that's all Klaus's work.
Yeah, but
Klaus,
when Klaus took it over after Frank Miller left, ooh, you could see how much wasn't Klaus.
Right, but I'm just talking about inks.
Yeah, oh yeah, he added a lot to that story.
Yeah.
He did. He did an excellent job. But it's amazing to me the difference. Like we said, he added a lot to Frank Miller's Daredevil. But then when he had a chance to do Daredevil without Frank Miller, it just wasn't any good. And it's like, it's amazing to me that can you would think he would be able to keep it going at least 80%. Because I can remember I dropped that right away after, because I was like, oh good, now we get to see how Klaus does as his own. Very interesting. And I was just like so disappointed with it, and I was expecting to like it because I knew how much, even back then, was I in high school when that came out? I knew how much Klaus added to that. But it was like, I don't know what it's like the basics. Frank Miller's basic visual storytelling is so good that Klaus couldn't keep up that type. Even having, he must have learned a lot inking over Miller. He couldn't not, but he still couldn't do it when it was just him. That was just strange. Just a strange concept to think of, because there was nothing wrong with the drawing. Klaus's drawing he was doing most of the drawing itself in Miller's Daredevil. So his drawing was still fine, but the storytelling wasn't. It was like, wow, that's amazing. That's the difference between artists. Let's see. Another comic I got this week is the latest Cerebus in Hell.
I almost picked it up because I saw that cover and
version.
didn't realize what it was. And I was like, oh, that looks great, because I know where it's from.
Right.
And it's like, wow, that looks really cool. I was thinking about picking it up. It's like I never heard of that title, and I didn't. And it's like, if I left it on the shelf, and I know if I bought it and did not look in it and just took it home, I would have been upset when I got home.
Service in Hell, collection of service. This one was bizarre, but I made it through it. It was pretty good. I think it was the last issue. It's like I couldn't even make it through because you're taking your chances with Dave Sim and his sense of humor. Because like this whole one is the aversions, giant stupid Dante, who he is and who he came to be. So there's 3 characters in this. There's like there's usually variations of. There's the Spider Whore, who is some sort of Spider-Man variation. There's who are the other ones? Does it say? Well, anyway, there's 3 characters who are supposed to give you their origin stories. That's the whole concept of this. And through the first 7 pages, they just arguing with each other. They didn't even get to the origin stories. And like, oh well, we've used up plenty of pages without getting to the origin stories. And then which one is this guy? Oh, and like they're all in hell too, so they're all bad people. So their origins are all terrible. Like where's the one I got? Here we go. The origin of borderline Bobby the costume. I forget which one he is. He's instead of telling his origin story, he spends the next 1, 2, 3, 4, the next 3 or 4 pages explaining how during the American Civil War, how the Union, how the U.S. raised its taxes, and how the Confederate had to raise its taxes. And then he tells us back here, research lifted from John Steele Gordon's Inflation in the United States essay in the January 22 Impress 7-page essay. So he told you about how the 2 sides raised taxes so they could hire their army during the Civil War. He did that instead of telling his origin story. It was just like, this is insane. It was actually interesting because it wasn't like jokes about how they had. It was like, the Union had to do this to raise their taxes, but the Confederacy had to do this to raise the Confederacy had a smaller base, so they couldn't do so they couldn't do sales taxes. And it was just like, what? It was just like I said, he goes nuts on this one. And then the last origin, they argued over the environment, and for the life of me, sometimes I can't tell if Dave Sim is a conservative or not, because sometimes his jokes seems like he's making fun of conservatives, but there's that old I just forgot the name of it. That law that says that with fundamentalists, if there's always somebody more fundamental than you, so absent an icons or some mark saying something sarcasm, you never don't know if somebody's ultra conservative is making a joke or not. And a Poe's law, that's it, Poe's law, and there's some of that in here too. I'm like, is he making fun of conservatives, or is just so conservative he doesn't know he's making fun of it? It's strange. Because he's weird to begin with in terms of being a conservative, because he's not really a conservative. He's like a religious nut. And it's just, but this was just such a weird, one of the weirder issues. You probably definitely wouldn't have liked this one, Wilson.
Probably not. I'm trying to think the way you describe that story. And it's fascinating in itself. All I can think of is what is the title? It's Cerebus in the Hell.
Right.
So this is just hell. This is
You've got to keep it. And it's like you have to keep that in mind sometimes when Dave Sim is making jokes about social issues. You're like, all of his characters are in hell.
Mhm.
And some of them are just so outrageous, but some of them are like parrot, like real conservative talking points. I'm like, but this is coming from a demon in hell. So what is his actual point? I don't know. It's so strange. It is so strange.
It's just wild. Yeah. So it's like, again, beautiful cover.
Oh yeah.
Almost grabbed it because of it.
And because of the cover, they sold a few extra issues. This is copy 599 of 1490. I think the last issue only had a print run of around 1200. In the past, the most popular ones have had a print run of around 2500, but I don't think he's hit that number in a while. I think it's steadily gone down.
Right.
Yeah, New Varks, that was the one I couldn't make it through, which was supposedly parodying Jack Kirby, and it was just nuts. It was just like, I don't know what he's saying with this one. Strange. Let's see. Kyle Baker was a beast of an inker too. Yeah, he did some nice. I always liked his stuff. Maybe I'm too forgiving, but I still like Jansen, Sans, Miller on DD. I have not read it since they came out, so my opinion is expired. I only remember my opinion. I don't remember the word. I always say that once my opinion started getting 10 and 15 years old, and of course that one's way older than that, and I couldn't remember the actual thing I had an opinion about, just my opinion. I'm like, my opinion expired. If I can't even remember the thing, then my opinion is so any opinion I might have on Jansen's Miller stuff really has expired because I don't remember it. Just my feeling towards it.
There gets to a time when Jansen starts getting that scratchy even with his own drawings, not just thinking.
Yeah.
And I think it's after Punisher when he's doing some Wolverines. That's when he starts going crazy.
He did put something out, I don't know, must be 5 years ago now at least. I can't remember what it was. But it was like an indie book from Image that he penciled, inked, and wrote, I think, even. And it was solid. It wasn't great, but it was a solid book. Certainly I liked it better than I liked his Daredevil in 1983, whenever that came out, that I don't even remember. So, like I said, my opinion expired. Still photoshopping Cerebus into Dore engravings. That's what he's doing. Writing crazy. Well, were you cop that? Well, where you cop that polo? Love the colorway. Where'd you get your shirt?
It was a gift from my sister when she went to Disney World. It's basically the T-shirt Spider-Man wore in the cartoon, the 1994 cartoon.
Ah, made into
a
pattern after that T-shirt, and then they just stuck the Spider-Man patch on it. So that's
otherwise you wouldn't be able to tell.
Wouldn't be able to tell what it's for. So it's basically Peter Parker's T-shirt.
I've got my green screen shirt on. You can put anything you want on here.
There you
go. Sim is a crypto-conservative pseudo-liberal. Yeah, I don't even know how to define him. In terms of, he's got his he's definitely not religious influence, but he took what he liked. He cherry-picked what he liked from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So he's not any one of those things. He's a mixture of them. And I also think he's a born-again horn dog. In terms of, you know how they say that sometimes ex-smokers proselytize the most about quitting smoking, and they're the most into getting people to quit smoking. In Dave Sim's younger days, he was certainly a horn dog and slept with all the women he could and used whatever fame he had to sleep with women. Then sometime in his early 40s, he found religion and became, if not a born again, he became a born again horn dog. So then he became celibate and proselytized against being a horn dog. To such the extent I'm not going to say he was a misogynist, because he was no more a misogynist than everybody else who practiced those major religions. I can see how he got called that. I'm not going to argue with anyone who thinks he is a misogynist, but if I'm going to call Dave Sim a misogynist, I got to call the whole Catholic Church a misogynist. I got to call the whole Western religious tradition misogynist, which they probably are. But I know I'm not going to get anywhere calling them that. So, and just what he believes, I have no idea. He's got his own crazy notions going around in his head. And like I said, from reading his comedy, sometimes it seems like he's making fun of conservatives. But is he? I'm not 100% sure. I think the screw tape letters phase. This is his screw tape letters phase.
Maybe Dave Sim got an STD from all the hard party.
I think
that's how he got crazy.
I think Sim picks and chooses what conservatism he is with whatever subject matter is at hand. That could be an apt description. It's like you never know how conservative he's going to be on what subject matter, depending on what religious thing he read that day. Who was the guy that took over DD around 200 with the ridiculous elongated figure proportions? I was out of DD by then, so I do not remember.
Yeah. The Brazilians skipped over a few issues, so I don't know if somebody drew something before William Johnson.
Who was it?
The Brazilians skipped some Daredevil issues after Frank Miller left. So then they go straight to the Daniel O'Neill, William Johnson artwork. They just put out that story with the booby trap mentioned by Arthur Barton cover. But the stories that were written by Larry Hama, they didn't publish those, so I don't know who drew those. Yeah. But William Johnson had a different style, so.
AFPC is going to call Sim a misogynist for me. All right, Sim got that civil invested brain. Maybe, I don't know what. He definitely got weird on us.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt. He certainly got ostracized from the comic industry too. Mm-hmm. Even from what's his name, Cyberfrog, the guy who made all that money.
Ethan Van Sciver.
What was that?
But Ethan Van Sciver.
Ethan Van Sciver. Yeah, because there was a mini thing going on where Ethan Van Sciver was hiring Dave Sim to do some work with him. He was teaching Ethan how to tell some stories, and Ethan was really promoting him. And there was going to be something coming out. This is must be 5 years ago now, where Dave Sim was going to be doing some work for Ethan Van Sciver. And then something came out where I think it was during some Me Too stuff. I forget which Me Too story it was, where Dave Sim got accused of hitting on underage women or something like that. And Dave Sim copped to it. He was like, yeah, I hit on underage women. I didn't know that I was that crazy. I was that out of it. Don't do it. Don't hit on underage women. And that just got Dave Sim ostracized all over again, even from Ethan Van Sciver. He couldn't work with him after that. So I find that funny that he got ostracized even by Ethan Van Sciver. Johnson, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, Von Sciver, right. Noah, yeah.
No, not Noah Van Sciver.
I've got a couple.
Noah did the Book of Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
Noah Van Sciver, he did a version of the Book of Mormon.
Noah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've got Melancholy Lincoln or something like that. something about Lincoln's Melancholy I've got by Noah Van Sciver. It was the only book I had by him. It was okay. Didn't blow me away or anything. Let's see, the last book I got this week is something called Star Storm. Once again, I picked it up just because.
Kirby dots.
Yeah, this very much looks like an Eric Larson cover to me.
I thought it might have been Eric Larson. To be
I
honest
thought it
with
was
you.
Eric Larson when I saw it. I was like, is this an Eric Larson cover? Because it looks like an Eric Larson pose. Eric Larson does the Kirby dots all the time. Eric Larson often has little figures. It looks like an Eric Larson composition, but it's what's his name? Drew Craig, who is Wes Craig's brother, it turns out. I did not know Wes Craig had a brother. What do we got here? I'm aware it's fun to transpose their names every now and then. Noah and Ethan. Yes, okay. He was making a joke.
Well, I try not to confuse Andy and Adam Kubert, so.
I do nothing but confuse them because I actually don't know the difference between them, having not seen their work that much. Besides, it passing through Marvel.
Adam's work has more the bodies, the figures have more amphetamines than Andy's.
One of them has more of their father in him than the other. One of them was like more, at least in the 90s. One of them was more slick Marvel's 90s, and one was more rough like his father. I can't remember which is which.
Adam definitely was crazier with the poses.
Okay.
And the in the shading whenever drawing the muscles, because Andy, I think Bob Harris told Andy to draw like Jim Lee because he took over Objectiveless.
Right. This
and Adam was doing Wolverine.
This one is very strange in that I don't want to insult Drew Craig, but there's an amateurish quality to this. But it's a strange amateurish quality in that it reminds me of what Red Room, those guys' channel. What was their name flew out of my head? The Kayfabe Effect. The Kayfabe channel calls 80s outlaw art. When there was a lot of like that black and white boom from the Turtles started, where all of a sudden everybody was putting out comics, and there's a lot of amateurs putting out comics, not a lot of great art, but this is like better than that art, but there was a period during that time before manga and anime took off, which I would say is in the 90s, and got really kind of like nowadays, if you see somebody who's like influenced by manga and anime, it's really slick because anime is so much slicker now. Manga is so much slicker now. They've got things down to a science. But in that like late 80s period, they were more influenced by sort of the rougher 1970s, 1960s stuff. And it was, and that's what this stuff reminds me, because it's like, let me show you. Like drawings like this guy's face over here. It is, and it's also.
Yeah, it looks like something that Comico would have put out in the mid 80s.
And maybe not even as slick enough for Comico. Just kind of let's see if these pages are pretty cool, these big. And know what's weird? He split the splash in half. Look at this. There's half the splash, and we turn the page, and the other half of the splash is here. And I was like, is this artist so sophisticated that he's doing this style on purpose?
Nope. I don't believe it was.
I don't think so, but
You forgot to count the pages and to remember that the splashes need to go on the left page.
but that's basic. You see the PDF. Someone could have pointed it out to him. It's just so weird. Let me see if I can get it. Look, like these faces right here, and they're definitely what also makes me. What adds to the and the plot is just crazy. There's this kid in high school, and I saw one critique that said there's the high school and the kid's in high school, then he gets some magic thing that's going to be involved in some giant space opera war. So it's just like somebody who's been influenced by those 60s and 70s Japanese animation would make in like 1985. So it's like really strange throwback. And like I said, what also makes me think of it as more amateur is the inking. When you look at the lines, one way that you can really see amateur work is the lines they make are very small. It's like they don't have the confidence to make a swooping line. They don't have a confidence to draw an arm, to draw a forearm with one line. So they go little line, little line, little line, little line, little line, little line. Because they don't have the confidence and experience to just go whoosh. And there's a lot of that in here. There's a lot of stuff drawn with tiny little lines at times, like his hair. And the hair had the hair has no technique whatsoever. Like if we look at her hair, it's right there, because there's certain. If you look at a John Romita comic, he knew the 3 basic hair techniques and could do them perfectly every time. It's like in her hair right there. There's no hair technique. There's just scratchy lines. And what is that line coming down next to her jaw? In between her hair and her jawline. I don't know. It's just, he's just seen some artist. We just got Big Paulo for a second there.
Big head.
But it's like, I don't, this guy's either, but Wes Craig, and he's Wes Craig's older brother. And I don't know if you guys know Wes Craig's art. He did Deadly Class. Brilliant. His storytelling is so good and so... Wes Craig is like an A-level artist to me. So I find it weird that his older brother is an amateur artist. I'm not sure, but it was kind of fun to read. It's not great. I might get one more issue of it just for the heck of it. But
also,
it was weirdly like throwback to the strange throwback comic.
It might be a leftover from back then.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Sitting in a drawer and decided, hey, I'm going to put this out. Maybe the next issue is going to blow us all away because there's a 10-year gap.
Maybe it was all done on purpose. I don't know. I almost picked that up thinking it was Larson. When I found out it wasn't, I completely lost my shit. It really does look like an Eric Larson. He must have swiped that figure from Larson. And Kubert. One of the Kuberts is cartoony looking. Big piss. Eddie P., the one true outlaw. The original Sotheby's outlaw. Okay.
Yeah.
Budget cuts affected that splash or silliness. Actually, it's good. I have a lot of affection for amateur unskilled art. I do too. I mean, I was an amateur unskilled artist. You see my early work, you'd know that.
We all have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I think that probably was sitting in a drawer somewhere and was like, hey, let's put this out. But I'm really surprised about that splash page, though.
Yeah.
Did that slip in, or was it done on purpose?
Is that done on? Is that the clue that this whole amateur style was done on purpose? I'm not sure.
I don't think that was done on purpose. he forgot that splash pages need to start on
Yeah. You,
an even
you
numbered
very
page.
well could be right, but I've been doing comic book production for so long, I can't believe that someone would do that. I can't believe it. It's like, no, that does
I
not
believe you.
compute.
I remember Topps did it for a Xena book.
Yeah.
Completely, they printed the splash page incorrectly, and I think that was a Michael Golden cover Topps book. I don't know what the production was like over at Topps, but they were doing comics for a little while, and that slipped through. So it still happens.
And I've said it's like most artwork I see in my indie comics this day that I'd call amateur is amateur in a completely different way than this book is, and that books in the 80s are. It's like digital has made so many of the amateur artists more professional in terms of they've got so many 3D models, they got so many stuff they can draw from, that even the stuff that I would say looks amateur still has stuff in it that looks professional. What almost never looks professional about it is the inking, because like the art of inking has gone away in comics, and most people who are amateurs breaking into comics know nothing about inking. They just know they can draw it digitally in black and everything's cool. They don't know the function of inking, sort of thing. But like I said, this one was amateur. It reminded me of a mid to late 80s outlaw comic, as the kayfabe guys named them. I just used to call them crappy black and white comics and bought lots of them. New style. Instead of every turn being a splash page, every page is a wrong half splash. Mix up all the half splash. That was just so strange when I saw that. I was like, what? Does he do this on purpose? Crazy. Right. They have a near infinite toolbox of digital training wheels to give them the appearance of competence. Good way to describe it. But where their confidence always lets them down is the inking. Like that one I got last week, Supermassive, which was the Radiant Black, Rogue Sun, Dead Lucky crossover one shot for this year. I guess they're doing an annual, the Massive, right? Because that was the second Massive Verse annual. Her storytelling was really kind of let down by her inking, because the problem I have, the drawing is fine, but they don't know how to emphasize things and de-emphasize things with inking. So everything's the same level of emphasis across the panel. And sometimes that gets really confusing with your trying to move your eye around it, because when the chair in the background is as important as the face in the foreground, your eye doesn't quite know which to look at, which is what one of the functions inking always took care of, which coloring can do now if the colorist is good and doing that. But if the colorist isn't good or doesn't care, that doesn't happen. So weird. But that was the problem in that one I saw. I was like, I couldn't always follow the story because everything was up close. But the artist could draw. I think it was a female artist. I'm not sure. But she could draw perfectly well, but she couldn't necessarily tell a story through her drawing as well as. And the coloring also was in your face. All of it. Boom. But that's modern. That's modern comics. A phrase I hate because it's so meaningless.
It completely is, because it's like, there were ages, and then all of a sudden, everything's modern.
Spider-Man 300, modern comic. Comics from the 90s, modern comics. Not anymore.
Nope, not anymore. And it's funny because I mentioned Spider-Man 300 because of that first appearance of Venom. And when I picked this up at the comic book shop, because Venom was a character that existed before when I started reading comics, there were supervillains that existed before I started reading comics.
Mm-hmm.
Kraven the Hunter, Dr. Octopus, they were always around.
And so AFPC.
Oh, take care. So Venom was a new character. You know, it was just in the hot just in the middle of me getting into comics, reading comics. So Venom is, you know, my new villain kind of a thing. So in my mind, I still kind of think of him as the new villain, though he's not. Right. The matter of fact, when I started doing the math of how long Venom's been around as a character, it's like, oh, it's kind of sobering when you realize that
Spider-Man 300 is closer in time to Spider-Man #1 than it is right now. Closer in time.
Yes. That was the realization I had in mid-Manhattan, where it's like, wow. And then right there and there, in middle of Manhattan, I felt I was starting to age. Right there. It was like, wait, he's not a new villain. He's just, you know, in a sense, older than the older villains. They're just, you know, they're just a few years older than he is.
Yeah.
You know, again, by that math. And it was like, wow, that's wild to think about. You
know what comic I just learned on Barry Dutter's page? Barry Dutter's an editor. He used to work at Marvel as an editor. Now he makes his living buying and selling comics. He's one of those dreaded comics resellers, as he says. So he's always posting on Facebook his adventures buying and selling comics. And one thing, and he just got a good deal today from someone. As he says, he's got to be able to sell a comic for 2 or 3 times what he bought it for in order to make money. So someone let him pick through his collection. He was getting a bunch of stuff. And one of the ones that I did, he's like, oh, I almost left this one behind, a hot key or something like that. And it was Iron Man volume whatever, #7, the first appearance of what's her name? Oh, so I just forgot it. Ironheart. There we go. First appearance of Ironheart. I was like, first appearance of Ironheart? I remember when she first came around and everyone was buying the first appearance of Ironheart. But I haven't heard tell nor tale of her in years. But sure enough, a 9.8 slabbed of Iron Man #7 goes for $300. A unslabbed high number comic goes for $100. I was like, look at that. People are still interested in Ironheart. Who knew?
Yeah, that's, man, again, crazy thing about comics. Who knows what's worth anything? You know, every few weeks, every few months, I would get a call from someone I'm related to saying that, oh, are these comics worth anything? And it's like, when were they? Oh, they're 90s books. And it's like, you know, then you go through the list of which ones. And it's like, no, it's just, they're not worth anything. It's like, oh, but according to this, it's like, you're not doing real homework. And you never know what it is. Me, I don't bother with slab books. I don't.
Unless they're clone #1, I don't bother either.
Well, yeah, exactly. You know, there are preferences, of course. There are always going to be preferences. But, you know, I was asked, why don't I send the ones that I have out? It's like, no, the ones I sell on eBay, I just sell. I let somebody else worry about that because there's the turnaround time that takes a while. You know, you're dropping $25 just for them to basically look at it before anything's really done to it, from what I understand. Right. And then there's the waiting time for it to come back. And if it's not a 9.8, what do you have? Because you have people that will only collect that and buy that.
If it's a modern book or book from the last 15 years now, and it's not a 9.8, no one's interested in it.
Exactly. So it's like, that just seems to be so much more work. It's easier for me to just put up my book on eBay, let them do all that other stuff. I was happy to get what I got for it, and I can move on. You know,
ETA Nick, who is, I just realized I haven't used his name in a while because he was a YouTuber for many years. Who I think just last year he quit doing YouTube, but he was a guy who he would look for raw books that were undervalued on eBay and get those and get them selected. You want somebody who thinks my book is undervalued? Go ahead, they can have it.
Yeah,
it's like because that's what he did. He liked to get the books he thought were undervalued, have them slabbed, and he bought and sold them over the years.
and that works. You know, if that's the way he does it, that works fine. To me, it's like
he's going to be buying your books.
Yep.
And I don't think Barry sells any CGC books.
I don't know if he does. I don't think
I've never seen him show one. He usually sells them in auctions on Facebook.
Right.
Matter of fact, I think just this week, because Facebook has like an auction function, and there are comic book groups for auctions where you can buy, and he usually sold his comics in one or two of those groups. But something weird has been going on with Facebook. He and other people on his thread have said where he got banned from selling things in those auction groups due to Facebook something or other. Because I think Facebook doesn't get a cut of those auctions. So there were people saying, oh, they want to phase them out and cut them down. So he just had the auction on his regular page where he just put up a bunch of books and was like, all right, till 6 p.m. I'm taking bids on these books. Just put your bid in the comments. And then when the time came, he just locked the comments.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. And he's got regular buyers too.
Right.
Who buy things from them until they fill up a box. And then he mails them the box. So there are always people there trying to fill up their boxes too, so they can get their comics.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah. They're like, that saves them on postage.
Yeah.
Because, they're buying, if you're buying like, $3 to $6 comics from them, you don't want to pay $6 a comic to have them shipped. So
yeah, exactly.
He'll put them in a box and wait until you buy more comics. But it's fun reading his adventures of selling comics, buying and selling comics.
Yeah, and it's also a good way to keep track of what is like a high price item.
Yeah.
So if he's doing the work, we could just watch and go, oh, I got that one. I'll put that one off on eBay.
Like Iron Man. I thought everybody forgot about Ironheart. No, they remember.
Yeah, because usually books like that, once the character appears in a movie, there's no reason to buy the books anymore because they usually tank right after that.
I think the rumor is she's going to appear in a movie.
Well, she already did. She appeared in Black Panther.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, she
I didn't even know.
In the last Black Panther. So, so she is one of those. The question is, will she be one of those new Avengers? Because they've been showing the younger kids that's going to be the legacy characters eventually. So they're assuming there's going to be a Young Avengers movie at some point because they've introduced almost all the Young Avengers already in some form or another. So it's like it seems to be if you're a storyteller, the national progression is going to be there'll be a movie or a TV show with these characters in it.
Oh, by the way, here's a funny thought that came into my head. The character Marvel killed off recently?
Yes, Kamala Khan.
Kamala Khan, they killed. There's
Spoilers.
people.
Sorry, spoilers. A comic book character is going to be killed, just as she's having a brand new movie come out. But,
I just find it funny on social media how many people are upset that Kamala Khan is being killed off. And a lot of them are talking about, their obsession, what Kamala Khan meant to her, meant to them, that they can't believe Marvel's killing her, this and that. And I was like, welcome to inclusion. You're now included. They're killing off your favorite character too. Just like all the people before you who complained that Marvel was killing off their favorite characters. You're now included.
Oh no, they killed Superman forever. What will we do?
That's the thing. It's like, and they're not fully ingrained in comics yet. Not until your favorite book gets canceled.
Yeah.
Then you're truly a comic.
You want to be included? Welcome to it. They're now killing your favorite character just for the publicity.
Yeah. By the time you say, "Oh, they're killing my favorite character again," okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's when they'll be. This is just the first step of being inclusive. The second step is when you realize they're just going to keep doing it.
Yep.
Yeah. Or when you figure out they're killing the character if few months before the movie comes out. That's when the new #1 comes out. There.
Yeah. Lots of different covers.
Yeah, because as I see it, it's like, oh, they killed a character named Captain Marvel, and they're calling it the death of Captain Marvel. And it's like, well, where did I run into that before? They were called graphic novels at that time. And to me, it's like watching TikToks and stuff like that and social media and all that. Basically people are saying currently that this is the worst Spider-Man story ever.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, you mean this is the worst Spider-Man story so far? Because we've gone through it over and over again. There have been really good books. There have been really bad books, and up and down again. And I haven't read this. I haven't read the whole Spider-Man yet because I want to do that as a run and look at it as someone coming in who read Spider-Man before. And like right now, there's a debate. What's worse, this or the Spider-Clone story?
Well, I actually had the story explained to me by someone who was reading it at the comic shop this week. And it was pretty dumb, but I don't... You know who's not going to like this story, or who doesn't like this story, is Mary Jane fans. That who I suspect, fans of Spidey and Mary Jane, who's just about everyone except me. Because I just never gave a rat's ass about Mary Jane, even when I was but I wasn't reading Spider-Man at the height of Spider-Man mania. I was reading Spider-Man during the late 70s and early 80s. Hardly the best Spider-Man period. And like the people, I always found it strange that they made Mary Jane a supermodel. Because the Mary Jane I knew was pretty, but she wasn't a supermodel. And then they, like, I think it was McFarlane with all the hair had made her. So it was like all the people of that generation, Peter Parker was married to a supermodel. That was the status quo. Him not being married, Spider-Man not being married to a supermodel was an affront to them. And I was just like, oh, I never bought into that supermodel thing. But I think it's Mary Jane. Fans of Spider-Man and Mary Jane specifically won't like this story.
Mm-hmm. And again, since I haven't read it, I don't know. Now, I've lived through the Spider-Man Clone Saga. We survived that. And until I read the new story, I can't really make an opinion. But when I look back at the Spider-Man Clone Saga, what did we get out of it? And it's like, we got new characters. We got... as I'm not still at Marvel, Ben Reilly, that supporting cast, things that happened there. Yes, that storyline ran way too long, but again,
there are reasons outside the hands of the creators that it ran too long.
That's the thing, is that you have people complaining about, was he the worst writer? And it's like, well, his hands were kind of tied. But we know that information because we were there to watch it.
Right.
So again, it's hard for me to end up going, well, actually, because, well, I saw what was going on. You don't understand. Wizard didn't help. That magazine did its best to ruin that book by spoiling everything before the internet was even a thing. So there's the craziness with that, and then executives putting their fingers into it, and all the weird stuff that we saw going on there at that time. So to me, it's like, oh, this is this is probably just as bad, or if not worse. But it's kind of par to the course if you're a Spider-Man fan.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to get. You're going to get good stories. You're going to get bad stories, and I'll probably end up hating the story. And my initial reaction to just what I've heard and what people talked about is like, the person who's writing Spider-Man, is it that they don't like Spider-Man? Do they go, does Spider-Man have to be a character that is punished each and every time? I would be more impressed with a Spider-Man story where he's not dealing with being crapped on all the time, But that's me as a Spider-Man fan. It's like, I've been through that already. Give me something new that's, new and different, so everybody could hate it.
Spider-Man, the lovable loser, or the Spider-Man who you keep tons of trauma on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see they came out with a that Spider-Man issue? I think it was a new printing this week with a black spoiler cover. They called it like the non-spoiler version. It was just the same issue with a black cover on it.
Yes.
I think that was Marvel's 5th week thing.
I did see that on the stands, and I chuckled because it's like, I get it. I know what they're doing. It's just, for those completists, they're going to need it.
Yep.
They're going to want it. They don't want to spoil because I didn't get to see what was actually on the cover. So I don't know what I'm imagining what they spoiled, but I don't know what artwork that they showed us.
Yeah, I didn't even look at there's a cover underneath.
Yeah, I saw it. I chuckled and I moved on. But again, it's like, the spoiler covers for me are, is kind of one of those things. Like, I get it, but it's not something I needed to get.
It's funny because these days it's hard for a cover to spoil anything because they often have nothing to do with the inside of the comic. They're just pinup shots.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're extra. Gone are the days where you can look at a cover and go, "Oh, I'm interested in the story because
I want to know what happens."
I want to know what happens. I think some of my favorite ones were always where they take a panel and they blow it up. They change it around, of course, but you kind of eventually see that scene in the book somewhere. And
Count Nefaria is back and he's kicking the Avengers' asses.
Mm-hmm. You want to pick up the book. You want to know what's happening.
Yeah.
You got Wolverine getting ready to kill one of the Power Pack kids. I remember going and seeing it on the spinner rack, and some kid next to me was like, "Wolverine has lost his mind!" Like, he was over and yelled. And it's like, that's amazing, to see someone have a reaction to a cover and scream. It's like, what is he doing?
You were like, I wish I was that into it. If I was that into it, it'd be cool.
Yeah. It's like, to look at a comic book and react like that, been years. I think the only one I ever had a real reaction to was, and it was a hidden cover. It was the Eternal Warriors. And the Eternal Warrior, in one of the issues, he loses an arm. That was the cover. Just his arm on the ground. And it was quite a disturbing image that kind of flashed back to me, like when I was a kid. The scariest image I ever saw in Star Wars is when Ben Kenobi cut off the arm of the guy in the bar, and you see the arm and it's bloody. It's like, that is a disturbing image, for a 10-year-old, let alone going into a comic book shop. And that Eternal Warriors issue, I was probably in my 20s. And that's a disturbing image. It's like, I think that was the last time I had a reaction to a cover where it was like, oh, send chills.
Yeah, I can't think of the last time the story, like a story on seeing because I buy comics for their cover, this cover caught my eye, and Where's the Jinx one? This cover caught my eye, so that's the reason I bought these kind of. But I can't remember the last time like something that was happening that was story related on a comic caught my eye. It like just doesn't happen anymore because they don't make covers like that.
Not at
If
all.
I can be so bold, can we please do a read from slab tonight? Okay, we'll do one right now. I got some in the can. Let me just find one. See where I have them hidden. Whoops. Command N. RRS. Let's go with. I have no idea what's on it. April 1966. We'll open that in another browser. Ooh. April 1966 TV tie-ins.
Ooh, okay.
Let's see.
I'm curious if they're drawn covers or photograph covers.
Share. We've got Get Smart, number 2, Bonanza, number 20, and Hogan's Heroes, number 2.
Ooh.
All photo covers with a little bit of art in them.
That doesn't look like Don Adams.
Oh, that's him. They did some sort of
they made a photo stat of a photograph.
Yeah.
Mm.
So they
regarding it,
moved the background because the background was probably too busy. And the photo stat makes it look like it's straight black and white, no gradation.
It's like if you took a photocopy of a photograph. That's what they did, it looks like.
Well, regarding intent, I have to say this about the artist. You missed it by that much.
Get Smart. Dell, Gold Key, Dell, Hogan's Heroes.
I think the Hogan's Heroes is the best looking out of them all.
It's the best photography.
Yeah. So that's the one I would slap. That would definitely be the one I would slap.
Yeah.
I have no desire to read Bonanza.
Oh, come on, a Western comic.
No desire.
I may have.
I didn't watch it. I didn't care for it. I would rip that one, and I would read Get Smart, because I would hope it would be funny. And I'm saying I'm hoping it would be funny, but I'm curious, is the interiors of Fumetti or is it drawn?
Oh, it must be drawn.
Yeah, it would have to be. But again, it's like, yeah. So I would slab Hogan's Hero, rip up Bonanza, and read Get Smart. Now, where would the dolphin go?
Well, the obvious place is the dog, but it might be
But
too
that's just too obvious.
Okay, so I'm going to slab Hogan's Heroes and read Bonanza, because I just don't believe that somebody got Get Smart's humor done right in a comic book, especially at Dell. So I'm going to rip Get Smart. I'm going to dolphin the Nazi guy in Hogan's Heroes.
Looks like we got two. We got Colonel Klink and we got Sergeant Schultz. Which one?
So
are they going? Or is it going to be like a mouse thing where all the Nazis are dolphins?
Well, we could do that.
I've
never seen Hogan's Heroes, so I don't know the characters.
It takes place in a prisoner of war camp in Germany during World War II. So there's the Allies who are in prison, and then there's all the Nazi Germans keeping them prisoner. Hijinks ensue. Where else would there be hijinks?
The height of comedy back then.
Prisoner of war camp.
Prisoner of war camps. Yeah, I would. Although I am tempted to make the main Hoss, the main character in Bonanza with the gun, be the dolphin. But I think the Nazi dolphins are funnier.
I'm going to slab Get Smart because there's something about that cover I like. It's just a weird 1960s pop art cover, let's call it. And
Chief, we have to make a meeting about that. Chief, we have to have a meeting about that, and because of regulations, we have to use the cone of silence.
And that pea green background with the red against it, it's just special. So then I'm gonna I want to read Hogan's Heroes because I can't imagine what a Hogan's Hero. Do you think they used Nazi iconography in Hogan's Heroes? I don't think they did in the TV show. I don't remember.
I don't recall if they did.
But I wouldn't have really noticed as a kid because swastikas were everywhere in the 70s.
Yeah. I don't know.
It was before pop culture decided maybe we don't want to use Nazi iconography that much. It's probably a bad idea. So I want to read Hogan's Heroes, which means I have to tear up Bonanza. Hold on.
Rip them all.
Rip them all up, throw them on the floor. Read Smart, Slav Heroes, and Rip Bonanza. Dolphin the Dog. I think I'm going to Dolphin the Dog, too. Even though it's the most obvious thing, I can't think of anything better than Dolphining the Dog. Since you guys already dolphined the Nazis. Scratch and Sniff Hogan's, Slab Get Smart, Tear Bonanza. All right. He was on the same page as me. But that's a weird collection of comics I've never read. I'm impressed Paulo did such a good impression. I would assume Get Smart was dubbed out his way.
Not in Portugal. We didn't dub.
It's how he learned his English. He'd pretend he was Don Adams.
Exactly.
That was a fun one. That was odd just because of the the technology. I didn't look at 2 numbers. What did they run story wise? Because some of those run like, especially for Dell, they run long issues, like 30 issues for some weird reason. They run pretty quick. I'm not quick, but long.
And then Dell's numbering was. I don't remember. I haven't read about it in a while, but I know it was always strange. It's funny. One of the earliest things I read about Dell was their numbering in one of the comics, the Overstreet guides in like the early 80s or something. Because I used to love to get the Overstreet guides when I could. I think 79 may have been my first one because of the comics history in it.
Right.
And I think that sometime during that they had an article on Dell's numbering, and that's when I was like, whoa, because they like numbered things on the inside or didn't number things, or what was that one? 4-Color Comics was their long-running series, but they didn't always have like 4-Color Comics as the title. It would just say like some Disney character or something. So if you didn't know, like Dell collectors had to figure out where everything fell in the 4-Color Comics series.
Yeah, and you just bet that Get Smart number 1 doesn't exist because it was 4-color number 1246.
Yeah, there's stuff like that going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even. All the Dell collectors looking for that number 1, and it doesn't exist because it's a 4-color.
I remember reading about that as a kid, going, "Whoa, what a way to run a railroad!" Which is why I was looking for numbers in these Dell issues. I wasn't sure if they were there or not. Like Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan. How long did Dell comics are good? And this is, and what's weird, Mark Evanier writes about Dell. He's got a bunch of blogs on Dell and Gold Key and Western, pardon me. Or was it Gold Key? Was it Dell in Western or Gold Key in Western? Now I can't remember.
Western was the studio that produced stuff for Dell to distribute. Then the contract ran out, and they pulled everything and founded the Gold Key brand.
They weren't just the studio; they were the printer. They were the printer. It was like Gold Key would come up with whatever they wanted Western to print for them. And then Western would actually be the ones making the comic book. They had, they were making.
No, but Gold Key was Western. Dell was the distributor. Before Gold Key, Dell was a distributor for stuff that Western produced.
Oh, okay. So
Dell was essentially a distributing business. They didn't
okay, that was
actually.
the distributing business. Western was a publisher. I think they also handled the
Yeah,
printing. And
yeah, and the licensing
Gold Key would hire
was
Western to make them
no.
it was Dell who would hire Western?
Dell would hire Western
Okay, it was
to produce
Dell who would
to
hire
produce to
So
produce and print.
Dell would say, "We want a Tarzan comic," and then
Well,
Western would actually make the Tarzan comic. They were the ones who hired the writers and artists and printed it, and then Dell would distribute it after Western printed it.
yeah. Although I think that Western did the licensing themselves and said, "Okay, we got Tarzan. Do you guys want Tarzan?"
Yeah, okay. Mark Evanier explains it all easily. I can't remember what it is now since I just read it like last
But
week or something. But
when Western cut ties with Dell, they created the Gold Key brand.
okay, so okay, so Dell and Western broke up, and then Western made Gold Key. Okay, that's how it got. But yeah, there's a whole, and like I said, Mark Evanier knows all this stuff because they were Western and Dell were West Coast companies, and he's a West Coast guy, so he did a lot of work for them. I don't know, late '60s, early '70s. So he like knew the history of all those West Coast comic companies. But yeah, it was weird because I think he even said that it's like Western actually produced the comics. Dell just told them what to produce. Well, you're right. Western may have even got the licenses and then asked Dell, which of these licenses do you want? So it was like nutty. Now, but didn't Western also put out some comics at some time under the name Western? I'm trying to remember.
I want to say they did, but I'm not positive.
I'm thinking in those Whitman 3-packs, I may have seen some comics labeled Western.
They had like a diamond logo that said Western across it.
That was Whitman you're thinking of. That's their diamond.
Okay.
But now I know what I'm thinking of. They reprinted like Peacemaker. I don't know if it was the same Western, but in the Whitman 3-packs, I have it here still somewhere. I'm gonna pull it out. They put out reprints of some Charlton stuff, like Peacemaker and a few other things. And I think it was branded Western. But I don't know if it was the same Western or not. And they were, but I'm gonna have to look that up. I may be remembering that wrong, but I think I got. I don't know, but like I said, I think I got those in the late '70s in the department store. Whitman 3-packs, because Whitman was a distributor who would buy up stuff from Marvel, DC, and whatever, and put them in those 3-packs. Crazy. Well, we should say good evening to everyone. Let Paulo get to bed.
Yep.
I'm going
Take
to
care,
sleep.
everybody. Have a great weekend.
I bet Gold Key were a lot of people's gateway comics into. Oh, that Dell sold a lot of comics. They were second only to DC, maybe. They sold a lot of comics.
And they were the ones that was easy to get, like in the back issue bin, the 25 cents comics. Everyone had.
The 60s, they were all over the newsstands.
Yep.
All right. So everybody have a good night out there. We'll
Take care.
catch you next time.
Bye.